Right, joining me now is Ivo Daalder, former U.S. ambassador to NATO. Mr. Ambassador, thanks so much for being with us. I have to ask you what you think Trump means by that. Who's criticizing him? And we can only assume it's because many observers thought that what happened in Alaska on Friday was a letdown for the president, a win perhaps for Putin, but disappointing for the United States.
Yeah, I think basically the critics are the people who took the president on his word when he said during the campaign he would solve this problem in 24 hours. It's now 6.5, almost 7 months, and he hasn't solved it. In fact, he's done nothing to bring the conflict any closer to an end. The reality is the United States siding with Russia, which is really what he has done from almost day one, makes it more difficult to finish this conflict, because the conflict will only end when Vladimir Putin decides that he has a better chance of achieving what he wants through diplomacy than through war. So far, that isn't the case. And the way to convince Putin is to put pressure on Putin to help Ukraine, to make sure that Ukraine is able to defend itself. And to make the cost on Russia of continuing the war too great. So that's the criticism that has been made so far, and the president doesn't like it. That's just too bad. The reality is, if we want peace, the way the president's been doing it, we're not going to get there.
What do you expect European leaders to say to Trump today? And we should also point out, and I'm sure you've heard this too, a lot of people say, you know, Trump often listens to the last person he heard from in the room. That influences him. So what do you think their message will be to the president at the White House next hour?
I think the message will be the very same one that they delivered to him last Wednesday, which is that this conflict will not end until the aggressor pays. And that means that there cannot be any negotiations on territory until there is a ceasefire, that there has to be, as part of any negotiation, a real and tangible security guarantee, preferably NATO membership, that Ukraine needs to be able to make its own decisions about the size of its military, the alignments and clubs that it wants to join, and it needs to, and finally, that there can be no change in borders by the use of force. And that, barring any agreement by Russia on these, the United States, Europe need to support Ukraine, and the United States and Europe need to increase the economic pressure on Russia. That is going to be the message. It's been very consistent for the last 3+ years now. The only difference is that the president of the United States, unlike his predecessor, has decided that the best way to make peace is to side with the aggressor against the victim in this war. Yeah, that's not going to work.
And there didn't seem to be any follow-through on those sanction threats that Trump had made just a week ago. I also want to ask you, given your NATO background, the one win that the White House seems to be pointing to is that Russia said they were on board with some sort of security agreement, like a NATO-style security protection, not joining NATO, but something NATO-ish, if you will, moving forward. Your take on that, and what does that mean for Ukraine's future?
You know, frankly, I don't know what it means, and I think that's one of the reasons President Zelensky is going to press this, as the clip just showed. I mean, the best NATO-like security guarantee is being a member of NATO. And being a member of NATO is not just Article 5, which says an attack against one is an attack against all. It is part of an organization that is trained, geared, operates in an integrated manner in order to deter, first of all, because that's the goal, but secondly, if necessary, defend the territory that's being attacked. So unless the president of the United States is willing to commit to the kinds of integrated deployment of forces in Ukraine, to make plans and detailed training exercises to ensure that the forces are interoperable, which is what you get from NATO, it is not going to be a NATO-like guarantee. And I've also heard Mr. Witkoff saying that, you know, all of this is going to be enshrined in Russian legislation, so we shouldn't worry that he's going to re-attack Ukraine or indeed Europe. Well, after all, this is a country that did attack Ukraine against legal provisions, both in the UN Charter, in the Helsinki Final Act, in the Charter of Paris that Russia signed in 1990, and a guarantee that it gave in 1994 to Ukraine not to change borders by force in return for getting nuclear weapons. This is not a country you can trust. And the idea that we are hearing from the Americans that somehow the Russians can be trusted this time is deeply concerning. And I think that's the message the Europeans and the President Zelensky are going to bring. We cannot trust Ukraine. He bluffs. He lies. Sorry, we cannot trust Putin.
Russia, yeah.
Russia. He lies. And any peace that relies on having to trust Russia is not a real peace.
Going to be interesting to watch how this plays out this afternoon. Ivo Daalder is the former U.S. ambassador to NATO. Really enjoyed speaking with you. Thanks again.
My pleasure.